Okay, so you want to own a piece of the Tesla Supercharger network. Not the car, the infrastructure underneath it. The sprawling grid of charging stalls sitting along highways and shopping centers that quietly became the backbone of long-distance electric driving across an entire continent. It sounds like the ultimate toll booth business, a piece of physical infrastructure that every electric vehicle eventually has to plug into, generating revenue every single time a car pulls up and starts drawing power. What almost nobody explains up front is that Tesla has recently opened up a real, documented way for outside property owners to actually buy into this network directly, and the economics behind it look nothing like a simple gas station. They look like a wholesale software business wearing a charging cable as a disguise. Let's start with what a supercharger site actually is, because the scale of this network alone explains why it became the default charging standard for the entire continent. Tesla operates thousands of charging stations globally, with the network's throughput measured not in gallons but in gigawatt hours, and by the middle of this year the company was processing tens of millions of individual charging sessions per quarter, numbers that keep climbing as more automakers adopt Tesla's connector standard rather than building competing networks of their own. The newest hardware generation, called V4, consolidates what used to require multiple power cabinets into a single unit, capable of feeding 8 charging stalls at once, each one able to peak at up to 500 kilowatts, which means a modern site delivers dramatically more charging capacity in a smaller physical footprint than the previous generation ever could. And here's the part that changes everything about who can actually own a piece of this. Late last year, Tesla launched a program called Supercharger for Business, which lets a property owner, a gas station chain, a hotel group, a convenience store operator actually purchase the hardware and pay for installation themselves, while Tesla continues operating the software, billing, and network behind the scenes. So what does buying into this actually cost? Tesla built a public configurator that spells out the numbers with a transparency almost nobody expected from this business, and the figures are specific. A standard V4 site with 8 stalls runs roughly $500,000 in hardware alone, and once you add installation costs, which vary depending on site complexity and can run tens of thousands of dollars more, the total all-in cost for a typical 8-stall location lands somewhere around $940,000. That's the entry price to actually own the physical infrastructure at a single site, a number that puts this firmly in the category of a serious commercial real estate investment rather than a side hustle, but one that's genuinely accessible to a real estate owner or fuel retailer in a way that building a competing charging network from scratch never was. Now here's where the business model gets genuinely interesting, and it's the part that reveals what Tesla is actually building underneath the charging cables. Once your site is live, Tesla doesn't just walk away and let you collect the electricity revenue. The company charges a flat, all-inclusive fee of 10 cents per kilowatt hour on every unit of electricity that flows through your stalls, and that fee covers the software, payment processing, billing, mapping integration inside the Tesla app, customer support, and ongoing network operations. On a site running an average throughput somewhere between 300 and 450 kilowatt hours per stall per day across all 8 posts, that fee alone sends somewhere between $88,000 and $132,000 a year straight back to Tesla, on top of the roughly $940,000 you already paid for the hardware itself. Put another way, at typical retail electricity pricing, that flat per kilowatt-hour fee effectively claims something close to a fifth of the site's gross revenue before the property owner sees a dollar of profit, which tells you exactly what Tesla actually built here. It isn't simply selling charging equipment once and walking away. It's constructed a wholesale layer sitting on top of its own network, where the hardware sale and the recurring per kilowatt-hour operational fee are both permanent, compounding revenue streams for the parent company, regardless of how the underlying site owner's business performs. So what does revenue actually look like for the property owner on the other side of that fee? Retail supercharger pricing generally runs somewhere between 25 and 50 cents per kilowatt hour depending on location and time of day, And non-Tesla vehicles charging through the now widely adopted connector standard typically pay a premium on top of that, often 20 to 30% higher than what Tesla brand vehicles are charged, plus potential congestion fees during peak demand periods. Subtract the wholesale electricity cost the site owner actually pays their utility, subtract Tesla's flat 10-cent operational fee, and what remains is the site owner's actual margin, a genuinely thin spread per kilowatt hour that only becomes real money once you multiply it across the sheer volume a well-placed site can push through in a single day. Tesla's own published tool estimates payback periods swinging wildly by location, from as fast as 4 years in a high-traffic market like San Francisco, out to 7 years or more in a market like Manhattan, where real estate and installation costs run higher relative to achievable charging volume, which tells you location selection matters here every bit as much as it does in the parking garage and nightclub businesses we've covered before. Now for the stuff nobody warns you about before signing up for the program. First, utilization is genuinely everything, and it's largely outside your control once the site is built, since a supercharger location's revenue depends entirely on traffic patterns, nearby competing chargers, and how many electric vehicles are actually driving that specific corridor, meaning the exact same $940,000 investment can produce a 4-year payback in one location and never break even at all in another. Second, the 10-cent per kilowatt-hour fee is fixed and non-negotiable regardless of your local electricity costs, which means a site owner in a region with genuinely expensive utility power sees that fee eat a proportionally larger share of their thinner margin than a site owner somewhere with cheap electricity, an asymmetry the flat fee structure doesn't account for at all. Third, hardware costs in Tesla's configurator stay fixed, regardless of zip code, but installation costs absolutely do not. And site owners in dense urban markets or locations requiring significant electrical grid upgrades to support the power draw of 8 simultaneous 500-kilowatt stalls can see their all-in cost climb well past that baseline $940,000 figure before they've delivered a single charging session. Fourth, this entire business now operates inside a rapidly shifting competitive landscape, since nearly every major automaker selling electric vehicles in North America has either adopted Tesla's connector natively or committed to it through an adapter, which is genuinely good news for utilization as the addressable vehicle pool keeps expanding. But it also means Tesla itself, not the individual site owner, controls the terms of that access and could adjust pricing or fee structures for third-party sites in ways an independent owner has essentially no leverage to negotiate against. Fifth, and this is worth sitting with, over 27,000 supercharger stalls globally are already open to non-Tesla vehicles, and Tesla's own network now covers more than half of all DC fast charging infrastructure in the United States, meaning the network effect that makes this such an attractive investment for a property owner today, being wired into the dominant charging standard on the continent, is the exact same network effect that gives Tesla enormous structural leverage over every third-party site owner operating inside it. So who's actually winning at this? Fuel retail chains and convenience store operators who already own well-located real estate along major highway corridors are positioned about as well as anyone in this business. Since they're not buying land specifically for charging, they're adding a new revenue stream on top of property they already control and already draw traffic to for other reasons entirely. Early participants in the program, including regional charging operators and at least one major convenience store brand building out its own Tesla-branded supercharger locations, are essentially betting that being an early, well-placed node in the dominant charging network is worth the thin per-kilowatt-hour margin, the same logic that made owning gas stations along the interstate system profitable for generations, just rebuilt around electrons instead of gasoline. Okay, so what does a realistic year actually look like? Take a well-located 8-stall site pushing solid but not exceptional utilization, somewhere around 350 kilowatt-hours per stall per day. At a retail price near 35 cents per kilowatt-hour, that site generates roughly $357,000 a year in gross charging revenue. Subtract Tesla's flat 10-cent fee, which on that same volume runs close to $102,000 a year, and subtract the wholesale electricity cost itself, commonly running 15 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour depending on the market, another $150,000 to $200,000, and the site owner is left with a genuinely modest net margin, somewhere in the range of $50,000 to $100,000 a year against a $940,000 upfront investment, aligning closely with the multi-year payback windows Tesla's own tool projects. Now the stronger version, a site in a genuinely high-traffic corridor with strong local electricity pricing and consistently high utilization, can push utilization and margin meaningfully higher, landing closer to that 4-year payback Tesla highlights for markets like San Francisco, at which point every year beyond the payback period becomes increasingly attractive, recurring, low-maintenance cash flow off a piece of infrastructure that's only becoming more essential as the vehicle fleet keeps electrifying. So yeah, you can genuinely own a piece of the most important charging network on the continent, and the economics, while thin on margin, are transparent in a way almost nobody expected from a business this new. The owners who do well aren't the ones who bought hardware in the cheapest available location. They're the ones who understood, before they ever configured a site, that utilization and location determine everything, and that Tesla, not the property owner, still controls the single largest lever in the entire relationship.